Good evening. Let's begin the meeting tonight by singing hymn number 180. Love the Lord thy God, love his staff and rod, for heart and soul and mind. In this command forever strong, to silence thoughts of wrong, all laws fulfillment find. Hymn 180. The theme of tonight's lesson is loving your neighbor as yourself and the consequences in our first story if one does not. I'll be reading from the New English Bible, from the book of Esther. Now there was in Susa, the capital city, a Jew named Mordecai. He had been carried into exile from Jerusalem among those who Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had carried away. He had a foster child, Hadassah, that is, Esther, his uncle's daughter, who had neither father nor mother. She was a beautiful and charming girl, and after the death of her father and mother, Mordecai had adopted her as his own daughter. When the king's order and his edict were published, and many girls were brought to Susa, the capital city, to be committed to the care of Haggai, Esther too was taken to the king's palace to be entrusted to Haggai, who had charge of the women. She attracted his notice and received his special favor. Esther had not disclosed her race or her family because Mordecai had forbidden her to do so. When she was taken to King Ahasuerus in the royal palace, in the 7th year of his reign, in the 10th month, the king loved her more than any of his other women, and treated her with greater favor, and greater favor and kindness than the rest of the virgins. He put a royal crown on her head, and made her queen. Then the king gave a great banquet for all his officers and courtiers, a banquet in honor of Esther. He also proclaimed a holiday throughout the provinces and distributed gifts worthy of a king. One day, when Mordecai was in attendance at court, Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, keepers of the threshold, who were disaffected, were plotting to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. This became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and she told the king, mentioning Mordecai by name. The affair was investigated and the report confirmed. The two men were hanged on the gallows. All this was recorded in the royal chronicle in the presence of the king. After this, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, advancing him and giving him precedence above all his fellow officers. So the king's attendants at court all bowed down to Haman and did obeisance, for so the king had commanded. But Mordecai did not bow down to him or do obeisance. When Haman saw that Mordecai was not bowing down to him, he was infuriated. On learning who Mordecai's people were, he scorned to lay hands on him alone and looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the whole kingdom, Mordecai and all his race. In the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, in the first month, Haman said to king, "There is a certain people dispersed among the many people in all the provinces of your kingdom who keep themselves apart. Their laws are different from those of every other people. They do not keep your majesty's laws. It does not befit your majesty to tolerate them. If it please your majesty, let an order be made in writing for their destruction." So the king took the signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And he said to him, "The money and the people are yours. Deal with them as you wish." Thus letters were sent by courier to all the king's provinces with orders to destroy, slay, and exterminate all Jews, young and old, women and children, in one day, the 13th day of the 12th month, and to plunder their possessions. When Queen Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her, she was distraught. On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the king's palace, facing the palace itself. The king was seated on his royal throne in the palace, facing the entrance. When the king caught sight of Queen Esther standing in the court, she won his favor, and he stretched out to her the golden scepter which he was holding. Thereupon Esther approached and touched the head of the scepter. Then the king said to her, "What is it, Queen Esther? Whatever you ask of me, up to half my kingdom shall be given to you." "If it please your majesty," said Esther, "will you come today, sire, and Haman with you, to a banquet which I have made ready for you?" And the king and Haman went to the banquet which she had prepared. Over the wine the king said to Esther, "Whatever you ask of me shall be given to you. Whatever you request of me, up to half my kingdom, it shall be done." Esther said in answer, "What I ask and request of you is this. If I have won your majesty's favor, and if it please you, sire, to give me what I ask, and to grant my request, will your majesty and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet which I shall prepare for you both? Tomorrow I will do as your majesty has said." So Haman went away that day in good spirits, and well pleased with himself. But when he saw Mordecai in attendance at court, and how he did not rise nor defer to him, he was filled with rage. But he kept control of himself and went home. Then he sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh, and held forth to them about the splendor of his wealth and his many sons, and how the king had promoted him and advanced him above the other officers and courtiers. "That is not all," said Haman. "Queen Esther invited no one but myself to accompany the king to the banquet which she has prepared, and she has invited me again tomorrow with the king. Yet all this means nothing to me, so long as I see that Jew Mordecai in attendance at court." Then his wife and all his friends said to him, "Let a gallows 75 feet high be set up, and recommend to the king in the morning to have Mordecai hanged upon it. Then go with the king to the banquet in good spirits." Haman thought this an excellent plan, and he set up the gallows. That night, sleep eluded the king. So he ordered the chronicle of daily events to be brought, and it was read to him. Therein was recorded that Mordecai had given information about Bigthana and Teresh, the two royal eunuchs among the keepers of the threshold, who had plotted to lay hand on King Ahasuerus. Whereupon the king said, "What honor or dignity has been conferred on Mordecai for this?" The king's courtiers who were in attendance told him that nothing had been done for Mordecai. The king asked, "Who is that in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to recommend to the king that Mordecai should be hanged on the gallows which he had prepared for him. The king's servants answered, "It is Haman standing there." And the king bade him enter. He came in, and the king said to him, "What should be done for the man whom the king wishes to honor?" Haman said to himself, "Whom should the king wish to honor more than me?" And he said to the king, "For the man whom the king wishes to honor, let there be brought royal robes which the king himself wears, and a horse which the king rides, with a royal crown upon its head. And let the robes and the horse be delivered to one of the king's most honorable officers, and let him attire the man whom the king wishes to honor, and lead him mounted on the horse through the city square, calling out as he goes, 'See what is done for the man whom the king wishes to honor.'" Then the king said to Haman, "Fetch the robes and the horse at once, as you have said, and do all this for Mordecai the Jew, who is in attendance at court. Leave nothing undone of all that you have said." So Haman took the robes and the horse, attired Mordecai, and led him, mounted, through the city square, calling out as he went, "See what is done for the man whom the king wishes to honor." So the king and Haman went to dine with Queen Esther. Again on that second day, over the wine, the king said, "Whatever you ask of me will be given to you, Queen Esther. Whatever you request of me, up to half my kingdom, it shall be done." Queen Esther answered, "If I have found favor with your majesty, and if it please your majesty, my request and petition is that my own life and the lives of my people may be spared. For we have been sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, slain, and exterminated. If it had been a matter of selling us, men and women alike, into slavery, I should have kept silence, for then our plight would not be such as to injure the king's interest." Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther, "Who is he and where is he who has presumed to do such a thing as this?" "An adversary and an enemy," said Esther, "this wicked Haman." At that Haman was dumbfounded in the presence of the king and the queen. The king rose from that banquet in a rage and went to the garden of the pavilion, while Haman remained where he was to plead for his life with Queen Esther, for he saw that in the king's mind his fate was determined. When the king returned from the garden to the banqueting hall, Haman had flung himself across the couch on which Esther was reclining. The king exclaimed, "Will he even assault the queen here in my presence?" No sooner had the words left the king's mouth than Haman hid his face in despair. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, said, "At Haman's house stands the gallows 75 feet high, which he himself has prepared for Mordecai, who once served the king well. "Hang Haman on it," said the king. So they hanged him on the gallows that he himself had prepared for Mordecai. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave Queen Esther the house of Haman, enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai came into the king's presence, for Esther had told him how he was related to her. Then the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken back from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. And Esther put Mordecai in charge of Haman's house. All the king's acts of authority and power, and the dignities which he conferred on Mordecai, are written in the annals of the kings of Media and Persia. For Mordecai the Jew was second only to King Ahasuerus. He was a great man among the Jews, and was popular with the mass of his countrymen, for he sought the good of his people and promoted the welfare of all their descendants. From the Gospel of Mark. Jesus went away to the lakeside with his disciples. Great numbers from Galilee, Judea and Jerusalem, Idumea and Transjordan, and the neighborhood of Tyre and Sidon, heard what he was doing and came to see him. For he cured so many that sick people of all kinds came crowding in upon him to touch him. The unclean spirits, too, when they saw him, would fall at his feet and cry aloud, "You are the Son of God." Then one of the lawyers who had been listening to these discussions and had noted how well he answered, came forward and asked him, "Which commandment is first of all?" Jesus answered, "The first is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is the only Lord. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other greater commandment than these." I'll now read correlative passages from the Christian Science textbook, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, by Mary Baker Eddy. We should love our enemies and help them on the basis of the golden rule. Evil thoughts and aims reach no farther and do no more harm than one's belief permits. Evil thoughts, lust, and malicious purposes cannot go forth, like wandering pollen, from one human mind to another, finding unsuspected lodgment, if virtue and truth build a strong defense. Better suffer a doctor infected with smallpox to attend you than to be treated mentally by one who does not obey the requirements of divine science. The God-inspired walk calmly on, though it be with bleeding footprints, and in the hereafter they will reap what they now sow. The pampered hypocrite may have a flowery pathway here, but he cannot forever break the golden rule and escape the penalty due. Watching beside the couch of pain in the exercise of a love that is the fulfilling of the law, doing unto others as ye would have they do unto you, this is no infringement of law, for no demand, human or divine, renders it just to punish a man for acting justly. If mortals sin, our supreme judge in equity decides what penalty is due for the sin, and mortal man can suffer only for his sin. For naught else can he be punished according to the law of spirit, God. A wordy prayer may afford a quiet sense of self-justification, though it makes the sinner a hypocrite. We never need to despair of an honest heart, but there is little hope for those who come only spasmodically face to face with their wickedness and then seek to hide it. Their prayers are indices which do not correspond with their character. They hold secret fellowship with sin, and such externals are spoken of by Jesus as like unto whited sepulchres, full of all uncleanness. If a man, though apparently fervent and prayerful, is impure and therefore insincere, what must be the comment upon him? If he reached the loftiness of his prayer, there would be no occasion for comment. If we feel the aspiration, humility, gratitude, and love, which our words express, this God accepts, and it is wise not to try to deceive ourselves or others, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed. Professions and audible prayers are like charity in one respect. They cover the multitude of sins. Praying for humility with whatever fervency of expression does not always mean a desire for it. If we turn away from the poor, we are not ready to receive the reward of him who blesses the poor. We confess to having a very wicked heart and ask that it may be laid bare before us. But do we not already know more of this heart than we are willing to have our neighbor see? We should examine ourselves and learn what is the affection and purpose of the heart. For in this way only can we learn what we honestly are. If a friend informs us of a fault, do we listen patiently to the rebuke and credit what is said? Do we not rather give thanks that we are not as other men? During many years, the author has been most grateful for merited rebuke. The wrong lies in unmerited censure, in the falsehood which does no one any good. The test of all prayer lies in the answer to these questions. Do we love our neighbor better because of this asking? Do we pursue the old selfishness, satisfied with having prayed for something better, though we give no evidence of the sincerity of our request by living consistently with our prayer? If selfishness has given place to kindness, we shall regard our neighbor unselfishly and bless them that curse us. But we shall never meet this great duty simply by asking that it may be done. There is a cross to be taken up before we can enjoy the fruition of our hope and faith. Dost thou love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind? This command includes much, even the surrender of all merely material sensation, affection, and worship. This is the El Dorado of Christianity. It involves the science of life and recognizes only the divine control of spirit, in which soul is our master, and material sense and human will have no place. Are you willing to leave all for Christ, for truth, and so be counted among sinners? No. Do you really desire to attain this point? No. Then why make long prayers about it and ask to be Christians, since you do not care to tread in the footsteps of our dear Master? If unwilling to follow his example, why pray with the lips that you may be partakers of his nature? Consistent prayer is the desire to do right. Prayer means that we desire to walk and will walk in the light so far as we receive it, even though with bleeding footsteps, and that, waiting patiently on the Lord, we will leave our real desires to be rewarded by him. To love one's neighbor as oneself is a divine idea. But this idea can never be seen, felt, nor understood through the physical senses. Excite the organ of veneration or religious faith, and the individual manifests profound adoration. Excite the opposite development, and he blasphemes. These effects, however, do not proceed from Christianity, nor are they spiritual phenomena, for both arise from mortal belief. The wicked man is not the ruler of his upright neighbor. Let it be understood that success in error is defeat in truth. The watchword of Christian Science is scriptural. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. To ascertain our progress, we must learn where our affections are placed, and whom we acknowledge and obey as God. If divine love is becoming nearer, dearer, and more real to us, matter is then submitting to spirit. The objects we pursue and the spirit we manifest reveal our standpoint and show what we are winning. Heaven represents harmony, and divine science interprets the principle of heavenly harmony. The great miracle to human sense is divine love, and the grand necessity of existence is to gain the true idea of what constitutes the kingdom of heaven in man. This goal is never reached while we hate our neighbor or entertain a false estimate of anyone whom God has appointed to voice his word. Again, without a correct sense of its highest visible idea, we can never understand the divine principle. With one Father, even God, the whole family of man would be brethren. And with one mind, and that God or good, the brotherhood of man would consist of love and truth, and have unity of principle, and spiritual power which constitute divine science. The supposed existence of more than one mind was the basic error of idolatry. This error assumed the loss of spiritual power, the loss of the spiritual presence of life as infinite truth without an unlikeness, and the loss of love as ever-present and universal. God gives the lesser idea of himself for a link to the greater, and in return the higher always protects the lower. The rich in spirit help the poor in one grand brotherhood, all having the same principle or Father. And blessed is that man who seeth his brother's need and supplieth it, seeking his own in another's good. Love giveth to the least spiritual idea might, immortality, and goodness, which shine through all as the blossom shines through the bud. All the varied expressions of God reflect health, holiness, immortality, infinite life, truth, and love. And we solemnly promise to watch and pray for that mind to be in us which was also in Christ Jesus, to do unto others as we would have them do unto us, and to be merciful, just, and pure. Please join in a few moments of silent prayer, and then pray together the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Our second hymn this evening is number 464. Dear Master, may I follow thee with holy deep sincerity, forming each thought to Christly mold, feeding your peace, my heart enfold. Hymn 464. Again, welcome to this meeting. The worldwide organization of the Church of Christ Scientists is made up of the Mother Church, the First Church of Christ Scientists in Boston, Massachusetts, and its branches. This church is one of the branches. We hold services every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock. Those services are also live streamed on Zoom to those who are unable to join us here in our church auditorium. During the Sunday service, children and teenagers meet in our Sunday school, where they learn to apply Christian Science to their daily lives. This church also provides a public reading room as a loving outreach to our community. There, the Bible, the Christian Science textbook, and other Christian Science literature may be studied, borrowed, or purchased. The reading room is open after every Sunday service and before each Wednesday evening meeting. If you would like access to the reading room at any other time, just let us know and we'll meet you at your convenience. For access to our website or our YouTube recordings of our Sunday service and these Wednesday evening meetings, just enter Third Church Miami in your web browser. Everyone is invited to attend our services, use the reading room, and bring the children to Sunday school and to visit our website and Facebook page. There will be a special election meeting of the membership on this coming Monday, January 22nd at 8 p.m. by Zoom. The Zoom link will be sent to you prior to the meeting. Please plan to attend as we need a quorum. This meeting is now open to you to share testimonies of healing and remarks on Christian Science. Remember, if you are at home, unmute yourself so we can hear what you have to say. Thank you all for joining us this evening, whether here in the auditorium or on our Zoom broadcast. And now we'll run the credits, which is something I learned from Lorenzo. Our thanks to our musicians, Dan and Eli, for bringing us our music. Our thanks to Joe and Joster for letting our light shine out in the world. Let's end the meeting now by singing hymn number 21. Beloved, let us love, for love is God. In God alone hath love its true abode. Hymn 21.